you know, you have your Enlighten 3, correct? You have 3 wavelengths.
No, we have the Enlighten 2. We don't. We have the 2016 Enlighten.
Okay, so how many wavelengths do you have?
2 only.
You just have the 2?
Yes.
You have the 532 and the 1064, correct?
Yes.
Yes. To my best knowledge.
Okay. You'll have to excuse me. I think that I was informed you have the Enlighten 3, so I have to pull up the different PowerPoint. Do you have the machine in front of you?
No. It's in a different office.
No? Okay.
I'm looking it up right now, just to be.
Yeah, because I did. I looked.
I have the serial number
It
if
was
you
the
want.
Enlighten 3.
I can give you the serial number if it helps you.
You know what? No, it looks like it's an Enlighten. I apologize.
Okay. Okay.
It is the regular Enlighten.
Okay. That's fine. So I do have the wrong PowerPoint up then. Let me just change it out. Give me 1 second. Do you have any questions off the bat with your system before, as I'm changing this? Have you used the system yet?
No, not yet.
Not yet. We had the technician came to check it out. We could start using it once we feel comfortable that we know enough. We haven't used it yet.
Okay. All right. Let me just continue pulling it up.
Keep in mind that
And you say it's in a different.
one of the things that we would like to hear also more is the Genesis functionality that you have. Obviously, we don't have something similar. We have different skin rejuvenation module on the PicoSure, but it seems that the Genesis is a totally different animal if you can spend a little bit more time on the Genesis.
Sure. The Genesis is called Picogenesis by Cutera, and it's actually using the 1064, so it is different than using your 755 modality with, revitalization. Okay, let's see here. Make sure I have the right slides up. Okay. 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 Now you should see a PowerPoint presentation up. Everybody see my desktop there?
Training presentation.
Yes, perfect. Okay. So like you said, we're going to go really quickly through the slides, and anytime you have a question, please stop me. These slides are just good for bringing up things that you'd like to know further about, okay? So we'll just go proceeding with the slideshow. Now, the first thing I have to tell you is that you do have your resources, which Bruce, you told me you would read online. Also, the really good guidebook comes with the system itself. And everything that I say in the presentation is really in the pamphlet there, in the booklet there. And it has a lot more information than we can cover really in the time that we have together. But it is a really good resource as well as the online resources. Okay? Now, just a quick overview. You have the 1064 and the 532 nanometer wavelength as opposed to your 755 and your 532. So the difference is that the 1064 you can use on all skin types. The 532, the 755 has a really good absorption with melanin. So those wavelengths have to be used very sparingly in your darker skin patients. Do you have a diverse population of patients, or do you normally just see skin type 1 through 3?
No, very diverse. And we have many people who come for tattoo removal who are dark, black.
Okay. So are you getting success with the 755?
Yes.
Or are you getting...
No, we have good success.
Are you good success?
Yes.
Okay. And any adverse events with the 755?
Yeah, here and there we get some specks of hypopigmentation that take some time to resolve.
Yes. Okay. So that's a very good point that you bring up with the hyperpigmentation. Hyperpigmentation, as you know, comes about with skin trauma. So, and then the shorter wavelengths. So you can always be safe to use the 1064 on darker skin types, along with the lower joule setting. Because as you know, the wavelength is a little bit stronger as you go increase in joules.
Mm-hmm.
But also with the hyperpigmentation, a lot of our providers are using, as you wanted some tips, they're using the picogenesis with the 1064 over the hyperpigmentation, concurrently with tattoo treatment and then post-tattoo treatment to remove the small particles that come about with the hyperpigmentation.
Okay, so I was talking about hypopigmentation with the 755,
Okay.
and not about hyperpigmentation. We haven't seen that.
Okay, very good. So hypopigmentation comes because the 755, the 532 can pull out melanin, as I just mentioned, that the 532 especially has a great absorption with melanin. So we at Cutera recommend that you only use this for your skin types 1 through 3, because any higher can pull out their normal pigmentation
Mm-hmm.
and cause adverse events because it's too strong for their skin type. So then we have to revert to the 1064 when treating these patients. So the recommendation is to always start with the 1064 settings because it's safe for all skin types. And as the tattoo gets lighter, or if you have a light multicolor tattoo, then you can switch to this 532. However, you have to consider the skin type. So again, Cutera recommends skin types 1 through 3.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the differentiation among the two wavelengths.
Right, but
For all skin types, you treat initial tattoos with this wavelength. Typically, your darker inks with darker components in it, okay? And then as well as the picogenesis that you mentioned, it is using the 1064. So smaller pigmentation issues on any skin type.
but you had
Picogenesis 1064.
Mm-hmm. Now you had mentioned an interesting point that we hadn't come across yet in tattoo removal, which was hyperpigmentation, and that you're using the picogenesis in order to dissolve that. How often do you run into hyperpigmentation?
Hyperpigmentation depends on the patient. I mean, it could be a number of variables. It could be the setting was too high. It could be that the patient did not comply with the post-op instructions and went and did heat-related activities to further cause heat injury. And it could mean that they're susceptible to it. Their skin type is susceptible to hyperpigmentation whenever traumatized. So, there are some providers that use this for hyperpigmentation due to any type of, be it tattoo removal or whatnot.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay? Predominantly, however, picogenesis is used for skin revitalization.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
That's just kind of an added benefit that it does remove the smaller particles. But predominantly, we are marketing this for skin revitalization and pigmentation on the face. Okay? And then, as I mentioned, just another review, 532 skin types 1 through 3 on lighter inks without any dark components left. And then, of course, the benign pigmented lesions like brown spots, because, again, with the affinity for melanin, it's really good.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So in addition to the two wavelengths that you have, you also have two pulse widths.
Okay.
The longer of the two pulse widths is the 2 nanoseconds, and the shorter of the two pulse widths is the 750 picoseconds.
Mm-hmm.
And nanoseconds or picoseconds, it doesn't matter. Any skin type is treatable. However, we recommend that you use the longer wavelengths on the denser tattoos that are initial, that are still large conglomerates of ink.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because it takes those large conglomerates and it breaks it up into smaller pieces. Now, once you have the smaller pieces or faded pigmentation, smaller sized ink particles, then you switch to the picosecond.
Mm-hmm.
And we find in our studies that it works much faster than just using picosecond all the way.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever worked with a Q-switch laser before?
Yes, 20 years ago. It was an old argon.
Yes, and that even though the Q-switch is nanoseconds, it's still quite a bit longer than your 2 nanoseconds that we give you with your Enlighten system now. So it's not going to leave a lot of heat behind as with your Q-switch. It's an improvement.
Mm-hmm.
It's not as long as the nanoseconds from your old Q-switch lasers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any questions on switching the two between nano and pico and the larger, denser conglomerates of ink versus the faded, smaller, lighter conglomerates of ink?
Sounds logical.
Okay. We'll skip over this because Loretta will be showing you this unless you have any specific questions on turning on your machine
No.
and cleaning it.
No.
She'll point out where the distilled water is. She'll point out where the breaker switch is. There is a warm-up. You should plug your system in for about 30 minutes before you start your day. Plug it in with the breaker switch up, and then when you're ready to turn on, it should have a very short power up time if the breaker switch and the plug was in place, right? And since we use this on the face, make sure you use the proper eyewear.
Hey, one second, question.
Laser mask.
Yes,
of course.
Regarding the warm-up, in what position do we leave it overnight?
You can choose to unplug it and the breaker switch off, or you can leave it plugged in with the breaker switch off, or you can leave the whole thing on. It's totally up to you. If you live in an area where there's a lot of bad power or thunder, power surges, then I would recommend unplugging the system every night. But other than that, most of our facilities keep it plugged in with the breaker switch either on or off.
The
Dedicated outlet.
technician recommended me to leave the breaker on actually, so the system will kind of stay stabilized in temperature, and he says it's more healthy for the device.
Right, it keeps the warming plates warm inside the laser, and that's why when you power it on, if the breaker switch has been on in the on position, it's going to be a very short power up time. But if the breaker switch is in the off position, then it's going to be cold. Those warming plates for the laser crystal will be cold, and it will take about 30 minutes to warm it up. So you can certainly elect to do what you choose. Again, I only recommend maybe for Phoenix, where they have a lot of power surges from their thunderstorms over there, to unplug it at the end of the night. But you can decide what you would like to do.
Okay.
And again, we're only worried about power surges if you are in an area or your building has bad power. Other than that, there's no concerns.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm sure you've been using your PicoSure on the face, and just like them, we have to stay away from the eye, stay on the bone, use the proper eyewear. The laser arm is an articulated arm with mirrors directing the free beam. So Loretta will show you how to manipulate and move that arm into different positions, and also that's most comfortable for your treatments. We recommend laser masks, and also even though the laser tattoos nowadays don't input a lot of heat, the patient generates the heat from the injury, so we recommend using cooling mechanisms before as anesthesia and after to prevent any overheating of the patient's skin. Okay, and you clean your system with triple spermicidal wipes or cabby wipes. And then there's a recessed window in here which Loretta will show you how to clean. But you basically take 100% acetone and you clean that probably at the end of every day, since all of the tattoo plume and fragments do fly around there. And then these distance gauges can be wiped off with alcohol or cavity wipes.
Okay.
Okay, here's your laser safety. Okay, so as you can see, the placement is perpendicular and pretty flush with the skin. On the face, it's really hard to get it touching, especially around the contours and the nose area. So we ask that you stay as close as possible. If you do want to remove one or more of these distance gauges, we ask that you make sure that it's completely perpendicular, that you're not in any angle whatsoever, because that changes the effectivity of your laser beam and makes it even stronger, actually. Okay. Pre-treatment, as you know, medical history, informed consent, photos in case they forget what it looked like, in good health, they're not pregnant, stay out of the sun, as with all of your other lasers, 4 weeks before, 4 weeks after. Ask them for medications if they're susceptible to herpes, to allergy reactions from the heat. Some people can, a few people can develop urticaria from treatment. Watch out for your keloiders. Make sure that they don't use any retin-A or Obagi for a few days before and after, because it can make their skin more sensitive. We ask that you remove everything. It should be clean, without makeup or self-tanning lotions, because pigment of any form can absorb the laser light and cause some unwanted issues. Shave excess hair, because the hair will singe with this device. As you know, numbing is up to you. I personally like just ice alone, but people, our facilities can use, lidocaine injections or, BLT. Okay. Now, if in doubt, for your patient, I said 1064 is okay for any skin type. But the test pulse is really important when you're considering a 532 on maybe a tan skin person, a tan 3 or what have you. Maybe if you want to treat a light 4, if you so want to, then do a test spot first to make sure. Okay. There are tattoo removal settings in your guidebook, the guidebook that I mentioned in the beginning. And it has options for your spot size, your fluence, how to adjust and follow up. So in terms of spot size, you know from your other lasers, the larger the spot size, the deeper the treatment. So initially, we like to start out with the largest spot size possible in the settings chart, so that we can get really deep. And as the fluence needs to be increased because this tattoo is fading, then we have to get a smaller and smaller spot size to allow that increased fluence. Okay. Fluence on thinner skin, I find, especially around the ankle and around the wrist tattoos, they're really, really unnecessary to go super high, because that skin is very, very thin. So watch out for thin skin, bony areas, because it does tend to absorb the higher energy. And then as you see your patients, through the process, you're going to have to increase your fluence as the tattoo fades. As long as there's no change in medical history, no change in sun exposure, you can go up about 1 to 2 joule for your 532 and 0.1 joules for your 532 and 0.2 joules for your 1064. Okay. And then the current trend is to treat tattoos every 8 weeks. Yes? If they're extremely motivated or if they're going on vacation, you can treat it sooner than 8 weeks, but just make sure that the skin is ready for it.
In your experience, do you ever treat anybody in less than 8 weeks? How long have you been working with this laser?
This laser, since it came out.
Okay.
So that was a year.
1 year?
All right. And so in your experience, do you ever treat at 6 weeks? Do you still treat
You
at
certainly
6
can.
weeks?
I mean, you may have a very motivated patient, right? And you can certainly treat every 4, every 6. That's your call, but make sure that the skin is properly healed at that point. Because you don't. I've seen providers go in when the tattoo is still a little bit tender, or possible bruising, or maybe even hemosiderin looking. So they go in, and that's just further damaging the tattoo. So I like to wait a little bit.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So as I was saying, we don't like to promise complete resolution because everybody's tattoo is different. The hardest tattoos is when they don't tell you that they have 2 or 3 tattoos on top of one. So those correctional tattoos, those non-professional tattoos, those tattoos with deeper, their tattoo artist was a little heavy-handed. So there's variations in not only the depth, but the ink particle size, and also the color. So the blacks, the darker inks are very, very easy to remove with 1064, but as you get to the lighter ones, you're going to have to use 532, and again, consider the skin type.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so here's your endpoint. And basically you are aware you're just getting that frost, that steam bubble after the injury. The steam rises up to the surface of the skin and it causes whitish appearance. And that's good. And then as they come in, they might not get that same response, even though you are higher in your settings. Just make sure that you're getting the erythema, that you're getting the change in color. You don't necessarily have to get this frost every time. And obviously patient feedback, if they're feeling it, then something is happening. Because if you treat on their non-tattooed skin, they don't feel anything.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Here are some things that could happen. So you could get bulle, either the same day or the next day, and then these just resolve on themselves, by themselves. You can get bruising. This is a bruise around the actual tattoo. So maybe it was too high, or the patient is susceptible to bruising, has aspirin, whatever medication that makes them susceptible to bruising, and here's hemosiderin staining. So this person went out into the sun after their treatment and didn't adhere to the post-op instructions, which is stay out of the sun, because anytime you overheat areas that are injured, you get some possible hemosiderin staining. And these are the ones that we go in after with the picogenesis.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let's see if I can play this for you. Very simple, just like your other systems. Right now he's using, this is the 532 on the red. The first one was the 1064 on the outline of the blue. Okay. And there you have the sympathiki eye. And that's your endpoint, right? Okay. Now you do have the option of treating brown spots with your 532. I know you probably do with your Pico Sure as well. But again, we want you to consider the skin type. So skin type 1 through 3 with these types of sun damage or benign pigmented lesions. You have settings in your book for them. 3 to 4 millimeters is preferred. You can go up to an 8 millimeter spot, but then they're going to have a lot of petechiae and a lot of crusting.
With an 8 millimeter
again,
spot?
Your skin type. I'm sorry?
But normally you had just mentioned that the fluence increases with the smaller spot size.
Opposite.
No, you can increase your fluence. So the 8 millimeter spot is really reserved for your tattoo. You can go up. It's your choice. However, just consider the depth of the benign pigmented lesion not being as deep as the tattoo, so there's no reason for you to go as deep.
I see. Now I'm getting it. Okay.
But it's available. And we do have a lot of providers doing, like nevus of Oda, these serious pigmentation lesions, that are very, very deep.
Mm-hmm.
So that's available to them or to you should you decide to try it.
Mm-hmm.
But for your regular sun damage, there's really no need to go any more than maybe 3 to 5 millimeter spot and depth too.
And for a nevus of Oda, how many millimeter would you use?
Well, we have a paper on it actually I can send to you, Dr. Ringfeld, but it's totally up to you. They are using basically tattoo settings for this nevus of Oda, depending on the severity of the nevus of Oda. If they feel that it's deeper, obviously they're going to choose a deeper, a bigger spot size so that they can get really deep into the lesion.
Mm-hmm.
You can start by doing maybe a test spot at a smaller spot size to see. But if it looks very, very deep, then that's why they choose the 8 millimeter.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so on tan skin, darker skin, watch out. Bony areas, again, the thin skin, just watch out. They tend to absorb a lot of heat, and you can get that bull-eye formation that we saw on the previous slide. We always use the picosecond when it comes to benign pigmented lesions because the density and the size of the pigmentation is very small. So there's no need to use the nanoseconds on the pigmented lesions. Okay, and then 4 to 6 weeks is necessary, 4 for the face, maybe 6 for the arm, because it takes a little bit longer to heal.
Mm-hmm.
Here are your endpoints. So this is like sunspots on a shoulder, and then you have, the frosting.
Yeah.
Whereas this one, you see how large area of the spot we treated? So if you go any larger than this, she's going to have a significant amount of scabbing, and they have to be prepared for that. And then, of course, the sloughing 1 to 3 weeks, depending on their skin.
Okay.
Now we're going to talk about picogenesis. So picogenesis is what we use, for our skin revitalization protocol. We do it every 4 weeks, every month, for 6 months. So once a month for 6 months.
Okay.
And it is using the 1064. We do have settings in there for skin revitalization versus melasma. So there's a lot of providers that are using the 1064 to treat melasma. Picosecond because it doesn't deposit a lot of heat, 1064 because of the darker skin tones. So for melasma, our settings in the book have you go a little bit less aggressive than your skin revitalization because we're not sure if they're the type of melasma person that's going to rebound from the heat that it's causing internally. So we start you out at a very low setting for your melasma patients versus a normal setting for your skin revitalization patients with no melasma. And then as your melasma patients can tolerate and they're not getting rebound, then you can certainly graduate them up to a skin revitalization setting. However, we ask that you go slow with the melasma because you never know if it's going to rebound. We have great results though, however, with melasma, but we start very, very slow. Start slow, go low, and then proceed from there as tolerated. And our best protocol is to do the single spot treatment with the 532, to do those single spots, the 3-4 millimeter spot size of the settings that it has in the book, followed by this picogenesis, which is a painting technique. So you have the individual spots, which I'm going to show you in a second, and then the picogenesis is you're doing it right over that spot that you did in a painting fashion.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so you're going to use the 1064 for that. And again, the settings are in the book. Let me show you a video. So first, Dr. Green does the individual spots with the 532. This is what he's doing now. Sorry for that overhead light, but he's just looking for spots. And he's giving one zap at a time. And now he's doing the 1064 picogenesis. And as you can see, you're just airbrushing an area at a time. Back and forth because the hertz rate is so high. That's why he's moving so quickly. It's not one at a time. It could be, at this point, I think he's doing 10 hertz. So that's why he's moving so quickly. And just one area at a time. Now he's doing the forehead. Yeah, and you see his distance. He's trying to stay as close as possible. There we go. And that's it. And you can see she's completely comfortable. So, post-treatment, again, this isn't a device that deposits heat, unlike our other laser devices. However, the patient can generate their own heat. So if they're telling you they feel hot, then please advise some aloe vera, hydrocortisone if it looks angry, a steroid, and a gel pack, a gel ice pack. Avoid the sun 4 weeks before and after. They can't cause any hemosiderin from the injury, and they can't be any tanner when they come in for their second treatment or their repeated treatment. Just the day of, they want to avoid their irritating facial regimes, especially after picogenesis on the face, and then avoid any heat-related activities that could, potentiate what the heat injury was given. And then if crusting does occur, or if you get the bullae, advise them not to pick at it or to pop them. They will resolve. Okay? So for tattoos, Cutera uses the Aquaphor, the same, protocol, everybody else, the Aquaphor with a cover for about 3 days so that in case there's any open things that they won't get infected, right?
Mm-hmm.
But after that, it's, let it breathe. And for the spots, the brown pigmentation treatment and also the picogenesis, there's no downtime with picogenesis, but when you do have the spots, you're going to get that microcrusting and the sloughing. Okay. Now, do you have any questions? Did I review what you wanted to discuss?
Yeah, actually, right now I don't have any questions. I think it was.
Oh, well, that's a joy to hear. I did cover everything that you wanted, Mr. Katz.
You didn't surprise us, let's put it in this way.
I'm sorry?
Now tell us a little bit more about the Genesis as a standalone treatment.
As a standalone, okay, yes. So for your patients that don't have any concerns with individual pigmentation, they just are interested in a revitalization, in kind of a smoothing of their face, a more bright glow. We have picogenesis.com. We have that website available for them to use. Also on YouTube, if you've checked out YouTube and you type in picogenesis, it's all over YouTube and people are seeing the phrases of picogenesis. You have to type that exact phrasing in.
Okay.
Excuse me. So it's going to give you a nice glow, actually, from the treatment, because the picogenesis, what it does is it's causing injury to the skin, forcing the skin to remodel itself and come back even more buoyant, even more brighter than normal. Now you will see people with modeled faces, modeled appearances to their face. They will notice a difference right away if you follow the guidelines and you put the amount of pulses that are necessary. But people will also report like a smoothness, a more firmer and fuller appearance from the Now, it's not going to appear from the very first treatment. Like I said, only the modeled people will notice the difference because of the pigmentation. But if they're looking for just revitalization, a brighter tone, that's going to happen over the course of the 6 treatments. Now, there are some lucky individuals, I would say younger individuals with more collagen. They will notice it and feel a difference right away. For your older patients, they might need a couple at least to get them going and to really notice it. But I've never heard of any adverse events from just the Picogenesis standalone treatment, and I've always heard a report of some improvement. People are very, very happy, and to get them on board, again, you have to send them to the picogenesis.com website or YouTube to really get them on board.
Mm-hmm.
I heard that for people who are using it, it's not totally downtime free.
The Picogenesis is downtime free. The spot treatment is not. The spot treatment, you're going to have areas of crusting that's going to look very dark. But when you do Picogenesis standalone treatment, just the 1064, without any spots, they're just going to have a mild flushing as if they just ran up the block, and that's going to dissipate in like 20 minutes. But probably before they leave your office, they're going to start to, normalize in color.
I see, but start seeing really differences about after 2 or 3 treatments. 6 are recommended. Do you know how much people price it?
No, unfortunately, I do not, and especially I do not know. Are you in Philadelphia?
Yeah.
Philadelphia area. So I would let me just write a note to myself to ask John Johnson to get in contact with you about the pricing in your area, and also to tell him to get you in contact with Sarah Bryce, our marketing person. So John Pricing, Sarah Bryce, and she can help you during a webinar, talk to you about marketing techniques and how we position the Enlighten for really good, successful, treatments and happy patients.
Now, what's the difference between the Picogenesis and the regular? Because you have Genesis on almost on every device that you sell.
I'm sorry, say that again?
You have a Genesis treatments on almost on every device that Kutera has. How the
Yes.
Picogenesis is different than the others?
Okay, that's a good question. Do you have a laser Genesis?
No, but we were exposed to Genesis on XLV, on the Xero, on all those guys. We always hear it.
Do you have?
We don't have those devices. No, we don't have those devices.
Okay. So apparently Kutera likes the word Genesis, because when it comes to our XLV and our Zeo, we have a protocol called Laser Genesis, and we wanted to stick with that theme because the technique is the same in terms of painting, and the wavelength is the same in terms of 1064. So we called it Picogenesis because of the picosecond. So our Laser Genesis still uses milliseconds, but a micro pulse, and Picogenesis uses picoseconds. That's the difference, but the main difference I would say between the two is one is depositing heat. So one is good for vascular issues such as rosacea and some redness, diffuse redness issues on the face. That would be your Laser Genesis, since it's a longer pulse duration, milliseconds, versus your picoseconds, which was in your Enlighten machine using the 1064 picosecond. That works, it's not a heat technology, it's photoacoustic. So it's treating your areas with sound waves instead of heat waves. So you're breaking up the pigmentation, and you're breaking up the cells in the skin to force it to remodel. But unfortunately, because there's not a lot of heat in Picogenesis, it will not treat redness caused by vascularity.
Okay.
Personally, I love both. And our providers that have both devices, both procedures, they do both of them in the same day.
Interesting.
So you're tackling the vascular issues, and then you're getting a really nice toning and brightening with your picogenesis from the pigmentation issues.
Now, some technical issues about, you advertise this laser like it's a laser without consumables. What about the lamp life expectancy? How is it affected by each of those services?
Well, I'm not the engineer. I can certainly ask, but I know that our machines are pretty robust and the lamps do not go out anytime soon. You do have a year warranty, and I have not, in my experience, have any of the lamps go out. But it's not a lamp. It's actually a crystal that is letting out its laser light. And the crystal is stimulated electronically, or via electricity. So there's no lamps involved. It's just a crystal.
I see. I heard that you should not move the laser from one place to another.
It's because of the mirrors.
You can move it from room to room if you're treating in different rooms, but I mean, as with all devices, the path should not be bumpy. The problem with moving devices from place to place is that there's a water reservoir that you have to worry about, and also with your particular system, the articulated arm. If you're very, very abusive with the articulated arm, the mirrors in the joints of that arm can get dislodged and your beam can be off, which is an easy fix with our field engineers. However, you don't want to cause that bumpy, transportation. But providers move our system from room to room.
Mm.
And I think we can also move it to a different location if you guys want to, move it to your current location. We can assist with that.
We are going to leave it there forever, I think. I read
In the office that you're... Okay.
Yeah, we don't have any plan to move
that's
it.
good. Okay.
Now, going back to the tattoo removal. Every device has some strengths and weaknesses. How would you define the strengths of the Enlighten compared to other devices, and what are the weaknesses? What if we're talking about colors, for example?
Colors?
Yes.
Oh, multicolor tattoos.
Yeah, I mean,
For example.
for example.
Okay. Sure. So, like I said, we always start with 1064. We remove the darker components of the ink first, which is, if you remember the slide, the majority of your tattoo inks contain a black component. So that's a significant part of the tattoo that you can remove. Now, colors, red, yellow, orange, pink, purple, those can be tackled with your 532. And those two wavelengths that we have do a really good job because we have more power behind those two wavelengths. That would be the strength. The weakness would be the blues and the greens. When you get the blues and the greens that are lighter, those are a little bit difficult to remove. We continue to use 1064 until they fade, and there are some providers that use the 532 on the blue and the green, but there are some blue and greens that are just very recalcitrant to that. For that, you need a different wavelength.
Right. Now,
And I'm sure you've maybe done research on the wavelengths that do remove the blue and the greens.
Yeah, we actually have in the PicoSure, this is one of the strengths of the PicoSure. I think with the 532, I think it is very good for blue and
Not the 532, the 755.
755. Is the new one?
No.
The first one? The second one is for the red, right? So it's doing good job on the
Light blue.
light blue and light green. So it's kind of complement each other, I think. So we'll have to drive our
Are
patients.
You're going to keep your PicoSure 755?
Yeah, we have two offices, so one in each office.
Oh, great.
Now, when you talk to a patient and they want to know how much is it going to cost them and how long does it take to take it off, how do you set expectations?
Well, I can't speak to the cost part, but I always, set low expectations because, again, you don't know how heavy-handed their tattoo artist was. If they have a correction tattoo on top of an original tattoo, the quality of the ink, there's a lot of factors that go into removing the tattoo. So we always say it's half the time that it took to remove it with a Q-switch. So, for example, if the Q-switch took 20 times, then it would take 10. If the Q-switch took 10 times, then it would take 5. So it's a significant drop in the number of visits, but we can never promise an exact amount because we have to see the tattoo as it's, progressing. If it is progressing, the need for higher settings, etc., etc.
You say half the time, half the number of treatments. Can you support this argument?
Say that again?
Can you support the argument that it takes half of the time?
I could probably look for a paper. Sure.
You can look for, sorry?
You can look for a paper.
A paper.
Okay, good.
Comparing nanosecond Q-switch technology and the resolution versus Pico.
Well, there are a number of papers out there, but it's not like we have not been using picosecond technology before, and we've been using it now for 4 years. And I've been using Q-switch technology many years before that. So there is definitely, the expectation that the laser company creates versus what might be reality. And you said you had been using the system now for a year. Is that correct?
A little over a year, yes.
Yeah. So we have perhaps cumulatively speaking a lot more experience than you have with picosecond technology. And realistically, what you learn over, let's say, the first year after starting to use Pico technology is that, yes, you can treat your patients at 6 weeks, but it makes no difference. It's only putting money in your pocket, but it's not actually letting the tattoo resolve any faster. So you're actually, in reality, back down to every 3 months, which is a better rhythm of treatment. And the tattoo has much more time to fade. And you do realize that there are certain tattoos that will also not clear if you are using 18 or 19 or 20 treatments with a picosecond laser. And you might say, well, maybe this person would have been better off altogether having started with a Q-switch technology rather than the picosecond technology. So these are things that you're going to learn over many years of tattoo removal, not necessarily after 1 year when you're still in the mode of treating every 6 to 8 weeks only because the company says so. Of course, you can always treat when skin is intact, but if you're going to be doing the job that you want to actually achieve, it's a whole different story.
So do you have to schedule them every 3 months?
Yeah, at this point of time, we are down to every 10 to 12 weeks, yes.
Okay.
There's no question about it because, we see sometimes we treat a tattoo, we don't see the tattoo back for another year and the tattoo might be gone or nearly gone just by the virtue of...
the body continues to break it down.
Exactly.
I only said that it's 8 weeks because that's the current trend. However, I don't normally practice that because I know that the body will continue to eliminate even if you're not getting repeated treatments.
Right.
If
So
you treat every 4 to 6 weeks, you are correct. You're just taking their money.
so what do you use?
Well, I give them the option. I say
Okay.
this is a current trend every 8 weeks, and you will find some people that's too long for them to wait, and they will go down the street to somebody that's willing to treat them sooner than that.
Yeah, I
So I give
understand.
them, okay,
their pressure as
currently,
well.
you know, the current protocol is to treat you every 8 weeks. And I see if they work with me on it.
Do you have your own practice or you're working for Kutera?
I'm working for Kutera full time now, but I used to work in a med spa in Southern California.
I see. But you didn't use this device in your spa, did you?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Did you have the Enlighten at that spa that you worked
No,
with?
we didn't have the Enlighten. No, we did not have the. We had a Photona.
I see. You are not the person to talk about comparison with other devices, right? You already mentioned it.
Yes, I don't have experience with the PicoSure.
What about Pico 4?
Pico 4, no. Is that with Luminous?
Yes.
If you want to talk about how the device compares to our competitor, the best person for you to talk to is John Johnson.
Yes.
Your sales rep, and the sales reps know how our device is compared to the competitor. We don't study in the clinical department comparative information. We just study our own information, provide clinical information on our own devices.
Okay.
Let's see. We fully understand the Pico Genesis, right?
I think so.
The setting we can get from the documentations. All the documentation is available online, including the user guides, etc. Correct?
Yes, and we can certainly email that to you if you want, but it is available for download on the website that you were on when you reviewed the tutorials.
Okay. One more thing, I don't know if you are the person, there is a listing of the provider listing. I want to make sure that you add us to the list, including the correct location.
Sure. Michelle, are you on the line? We can get Tyler to
I can
check that. Okay.
take care of that.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll get Tyler to confirm your location and make sure that you're on the provider locator on the website.
Okay. My last question is maintenance and contract maintenance contract. How does it work let's say out of 20 of your customers, what type of warranty contract do they choose? You know, every laser has its own profile of warranties. I'm not talking about the pricing. Pricing is fixed, but some go for a 1-year warranty, some don't. What are the options?
Talk to your sales rep, and they can walk you through all the warranty information. I'm sorry, from clinical,
I
we can
see.
only answer for you clinical questions like how to do treatments and what settings to use, patient selection, and any reaction that you're seeing. But when it comes to anything marketing or warranty-wise or dealing with tech support, we would have to forward you to them.
Okay. Do you have any question about the laser is only 1 year on the market, so probably they don't have experience of kind of finishing the tattoos, right?
Yeah, but neither of Ota. But if she doesn't have her own, if she didn't use it in practice, then she cannot tell me.
Okay, I think we covered whatever you could provide us, I think. And I think it's kind of, we learn new things and confirm what we thought. Thank you for taking the time out of the schedule, because it was not on the regular schedule. I'm going to go ahead and speak to Loretta and bring her over for training.